My nephew Grayson was always a smart kid. A good kid. My sister was raising him by herself, and while she had a lot of work to make ends meet, he never complained or acted up because of it. Instead, he would fill his time with books and games of his own creation, and while I didn't get to see them as often as I would have liked, it never ceased to amaze me how much they loved each other and how happy they were. I was part of that love too. We were the only family each other had, and while distance and work kept me from seeing them more than every few months, it was something I always looked forward to. In between, we would keep touch through text and funny videos. And then I got on the Ghost Hound, a stuffed brown hound dog to go with his recently developed interest in ghost hunting. But the Ghost Hound wasn't just a simple stuffed toy. Supposedly it contained temperature sensors and an electromagnetic field, or an EMF meter. According to what Grayson had told me and what I found out researching the toy, ghost hunters use changes in EMF and temperature as two big indicators that a ghost is possibly around. When you turn down the Ghost Hound and it picks up a significant change in the nearby EMF, its chest will glow a pulsating green. If the temperature drops suddenly, the left front paw will glow blue. If the temperature spikes upward suddenly, the right paw will glow red. And all these lights are accompanied by an audio cue. The toy dog will howl to let you know that a ghost may be nearby. It's cute stuff, honestly, but I was still unsure how much use Grayson would get out of it. Fortunately, his initial excitement over the toy didn't fade. He started making ghost hunting videos and sending them to me, using the Ghost Hound around their house, at school and at the local park. It was great seeing him so happy, and the videos were really cool. He was a funny kid, and he would always adopt the overly dramatic narration as he and the Ghost Hound patrolled for lingering spirits. But then late this year, him and my sister Amber were both murdered during a home invasion. No witnesses, and no known motive other than possibly theft or just a desire to hurt someone. The investigation is still technically open, but I know the likelihood of them ever catching who did it at this point is slim to none. I was actually planning on visiting them in a few days when it had happened. I moved up my flight to plan their funerals and attend to all the other details that have to be dealt with when a life ends. Most of their possessions I gave to charity, though I kept all of the photos that I found, as well as a battered old trumpet case containing the instrument Amber had used since junior high. From Grayson's room, I took a couple of trophies, collections of drawings he had done over the years, and the Ghost Hound. For the longest time, I kept everything squirreled away where I wouldn't see it. The loss of them was still too fresh, and I needed time before reminders of them would bring me as much joy as they did pain. Still, last week I was starting to consider bringing some of their stuff out, when I came home to find the Ghost Hound sitting in my guest bedroom. It was on a small stack of boxes next to the closet. I kept both of the boxes and the toy in, and my first thought was that someone had broken into the house. I searched the whole place, checking all of the doors and the windows, looking everywhere for any other sign of disturbance. But then I remembered. A few days earlier, I had been pulling stuff out of the closet in my search for an old receipt. I had been busy and distracted at the time, and I couldn't say that I had put the boxes back. I didn't specifically recall putting out the toy dog, but I couldn't say that I didn't, and I hadn't been back into the room since. It seemed like the only reasonable explanation. I contemplated putting the Ghost Hound back up again, but instead I took it with me to the living room and sat him on the coffee table. Later that night, I was watching television when I suddenly heard a loud and mournful howl. I jumped, my eyes scanning the room for the noise's source until I saw the pulsating green glow of the toy dog's chest. Licking my lips nervously, I reached for the dog. It had stopped howling now, but the green light continued to flash as I turned the toy over to look at the power switch. It was switched on, but I knew that I hadn't done it. It also seemed odd that the batteries would still be working if it had been left on since Grayson had last used it. When I flipped the switch off, the green glow died. I found myself surprised by the sadness that came over me as the light went away. So after a moment's deliberation, I turned the ghost hound back on and I put it back on the table. It sat quiet the rest of the night. Over the next few days, I found myself waiting for the dog to do something again, but nothing happened. I don't really believe in ghosts, but I don't not believe in them either. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't grow more disappointed every day. By the third night, I decided to change out the batteries, promising myself that if nothing happened that night, I would move the ghost hound to a less conspicuous place and get it off my mind. That evening, I tried to watch television, but my eyes kept going to the dog throughout the night. When nothing had happened by midnight, I went to bed with a heavy heart. After staring into the dark for nearly an hour, I finally found my way into troubled sleep. I was awoken by the ghost hound's howl. Jumping out of bed, I ran back into the living room, but I couldn't find the toy dog, even after flipping on the light. I was looking under the table when I heard the howl again. It was coming from the kitchen. I went slower into the kitchen, my sleepy excitement being slowly penetrated by concern and fear, as I entered the room and I saw the ghost hound. It was sitting on the counter next to the oven, and I knew that there was no way that I had put it there. The next 20 minutes were spent patrolling the house with a butcher knife, but like before, I could see no signs of any intrusion other than the ghost hound itself. I considered calling the police, but what was the point? They were unlikely to find anything beyond what I could tell them, which wasn't much. So instead, I picked up the ghost hound and I went back to the living room. Sitting down with it still in my hands, I tried to think of possible explanations for what was going on. Possible explanations aside from the toy dog being haunted, which I wasn't prepared to believe. It could be a cruel prank of some kind, or it was possible that it was all in my head. I didn't think that I was going crazy, but then crazy people rarely do. Maybe I really did take it to the kitchen and I left it. I was very tired when I went to bed, after all. Or I could have gotten up and I moved it in my sleep. Or the toy dog could be haunted. I looked back down into the blank-eyed stare of the ghost hound. Is anyone there? Immediately, the dog let out a howl and the right foot lit up red. I almost threw the thing on the floor then, but instead I forced myself to grip it tightly as I steadied myself. Does red mean yes? The red foot again. Yes. Beer. Still, I needed to keep going while it was responding. Are you a ghost? The red foot again. Are you Amber? The left foot lit up blue. The blue foot. No. Are you hollowed? My mouth feeling like I'd eaten a pound of sand. In several moments, to the point that I thought it wasn't going to answer at all. And then the chest began to glow green again, the light pulsing like a heartbeat. And we had been college roommates, with me studying history, spare time. I knew that I wouldn't have any idea what I was looking at if I opened the ghost hound up, and I was afraid of breaking the toy if something important and miraculous really was going on. I knew that I could trust Parker, both to be honest with me and to not judge me for asking for his help. Led me to his hobby workshop. Gently taking the ghost hound from me, sucked in an involuntary breath at the cutting, and he looked up at me with a comforting smile. Nodded, not trusting myself to speak. And Parker went back to work, slowly delving into the internal parts of the toy. He took notes, leaving no real trace the dog toy had been cut open at all. sitting stool in the corner of the room while he worked, and I couldn't help but feel like I was in the waiting room of a hospital hoping for some good news. Okay, so this morning I did some research after you called, both on the toy and the common components used in this kind of thing. So right off, I can tell you that I found a digital thermometer. It's actually kind of a neat way to do it. He gave me a sheepish look. Sorry I'm a nerd, I know. Anyway, I saw the LED lights in the front feet and chest, the voice box, and the small speaker that generates the howl. All that stuff is connected like I'd expect, and it makes sense. He was frowning slightly now, and I could tell that he was trying to hide the concern on his face. But he shrugged. Look, I'm not a toy maker, and people are. I felt my hands tighten on my knees. What do you mean, extra stuff? What's in there? And without knowing what I'm dealing with, I'm not going to risk cracking one open and breaking the toy with mystery parts that are connected to the rest. He saw my expression and he raised a hand. It's probably nothing. Like I said, weird and very. With luck, I'll be able to track down what these things are. Probably something stupid that I'm overlooking. Picking up the ghost hound, he looked at where he had repaired the cut. I can always go back in if we find something that needs double checking, but I kind of figured you would want to take him home with you. He didn't meet my eyes, but when I quietly nodded, he stood up and he handed the toy back to me. Try not to worry, it'd be dark when I got home, and after eating some leftovers, I settled onto the living room couch. The ghost hound was back in its spot on the table, and this time, Blueberry. No response. Blueberry's stuff was some kind of microphone setup, where if the toy heard somebody talking, it would flash lights and howl in response. If that was the case, then me saying it randomly had hit me. Maybe it really was a smart toy. The extra something. Why they wouldn't market that as a feature and charge more for the toys was beyond me. To know before I gave my permission to believe that Grayson or Amber might act. Is there an afterlife? The red paw answered before fumbling it out of my pocket and accepting the call. It was Parker. Hey man, you almost gave me a heart attack. He let out a short, nervous laugh. Sorry. Look, is everything cool over there? I glanced at the ghost hound and I wiped my eyes. Yeah, it's good. I've been trying to figure this thing out. Why, is something wrong? He paused. I don't know. Probably not. But I finally figured out what two of those mystery components are. They're used for RF. Radio frequency antenna and stuff. Kind of like a remote-controlled car or something. Just a lot more expensive and weirder. I felt my skin prickle slightly. Weirder how? Well, you don't normally put RF stuff in that kind of casing, especially the antenna. It kind of defeats the purpose, you know. It degrades the reception. And now this stuff is fairly high-end, so it's designed to pick up signals even though it's in the casing. But the whole point of the case is to make it hard to tell what it is. Typically you'd see something like this on a spy gadget or even a short-range bomb trigger. What the hell? Why would that kind of stuff be in a toy? What would it be used for? I could hear the worry in his voice. I'm not sure. The most likely answer is it would be a way to trigger the lights and the howl it makes. Someone could have a remote and make it do what they wanted. But that isn't the thing that has spooked me. It's the range that it would have with being designed like that. What do you mean? I'm not trying to freak you out, but unless I'm wrong, I would estimate that the remote control would have to be no more than 15 or 20 feet away from the toy to work. It hasn't gone off again tonight, has it? His voice was suddenly gone. And when I looked at my phone, I saw that I had no signal anymore. Panicked, I was about to stand up to leave the house when the ghost hound's chest started flashing green again, this time without the usual accompanying howl. I froze, unsure of what to do next. And that's when I saw motion reflected in the television screen. There was someone standing in the doorway of my kitchen. They were large and dressed in dark clothing, except for a silver mask that covered their face. In one hand, they held something small, possibly the remote. In the other, they held a long, gleaming hunting knife. It reminded me of the one they had found the night Amber and Grayson were murdered. "Are you going to kill me?" My eyes were fixed on the reflection, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw the right foot light up red. And behind me, the killer began to howl.